Hello, lovely listeners. A very warm welcome to new listeners to the podcast, and of course to those of you who are tuning in with me every Wednesday. To make sure this remains a beautiful, safe space to listen, I just wanted to let you know before we get started that there is discussion of suicide and suicidal ideation in this episode. If this is not a comfortable listen for you this week, then I very much look forward to being back with you again next week. All right, let's go. Hello, I'm Dr. Jodie Richardson, and you're listening to, well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, was once thought to be a male-only disorder. And while the ratio of diagnoses in childhood is 3 boys to 1 girl, it's actually very different for adults, where the ratio is along the lines of 1 to 1. So what this actually means is that girls are underdiagnosed in childhood because it is present in childhood. It's not something that comes on in adulthood, which means that these differences in the numbers is really shining a light on the fact that there are a lot of young girls, particularly even now, who are living with ADHD and who don't know and understand themselves, and neither do their families. And this, of course, explains what I've been seeing, and I wonder if you've been seeing it too. So many incredible women sharing their story of a later diagnosis as a woman with ADHD and with other diagnoses as well. Without a diagnosis and the deep understanding that comes with it, and of course the opportunity to connect with other people who know and understand your diagnosis as well, so many women with ADHD are actually reporting spending their lives feeling different or even stupid or careless or even lazy, and blame themselves for the difficulties they're experiencing with things like work and relationships and family and parenting and in other parts of their lives as well. And today's brilliant guest, who I had the joy of meeting at a recent conference on the Gold Coast in gorgeous Queensland here in Australia, she knows this all too well, and she joins us from the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. She is the founder of ADHD Mums, and she is helping women feel validated. She's giving them a sense of belonging to a community. She's empowering them with everything they need to reduce their suffering, to actually understand, not only understand, but also embrace who they are, understand the role of medication, which is a really important piece of the puzzle when it comes to ADHD, and to absolutely thrive, which is what we all want for ourselves and for the women around us. Jane McFadden is a former psychologist. She's an autism spectrum disorder clinical specialist, a neuroscientist and neurodivergence assessor and specialist. And it is an absolute joy and a pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. Hello, Jane.
What an introduction, Jodie. I'm like nervous to, kind of live up to it. Thank you so much.
I know what you mean. I know it's. I think it's nice though when we kind of get a chance to hear a bit about the way someone else sums up the work that we're doing and how it's kind of viewed from somebody who has. I mean, I've only just recently met you, and Jane and I were at a conference, and you just came up and started chatting and shared a bit with me about your work, and I'm like, can you please come on my podcast? And here we are, and it's probably not even 2 weeks since we met. So I'm really grateful to you, and I'm really thrilled to know about the work you're doing and to be able to bring it to this beautiful podcast community. So I wonder, Jane, could you please start by sharing with us a little about your story, because you're walking in these shoes as well as helping other women walking them too, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a journey. I had lots of ADHD experiences as a child. And when I talk, I should really reference that I have a very hyperactive form of ADHD. So there's 2 types, or there's 3 types actually. There's inattentive ADHD, hyperactive and impulsivity ADHD, and then there's the combined. I would probably be combined, but I'm extremely hyperactive. Okay. So I just don't want anyone to listen to this and think, oh, that's not me because I don't have that energy level. There's a lot of inattentive ADHD women out there. So for me, I've always had a very hyperactive form of ADHD. I have very fond memories of my dad and my grandma chopping down trees. She was in her 80s. Like, they didn't sit down. I have a very hyperactive family. And I began struggling with anxiety when I was probably earlier, but I had quite a large mental health breakdown when I was around 14, when I hit grade 7. And as it went on, my little brother was diagnosed with ADD, as it was called back then.
Yes.
And I was missed. And I think obviously medical and mental health professionals have changed now, but back, that long ago, no one knew what depression was, no one knew what anxiety was. And I remember them introducing it to my family, and my parents were like, what does she have to be depressed or anxious about? And I came from a very stable background. So to be fair, I mean, I get it. So that was a really tricky one, because my little brother was medicated for ADHD and I was medicated with very heavy antidepressants and anti-anxiety tablets for about 3 years.
Right.
And some of those tablets have been taken off the market, and I actually have got some journals of what those medications were and at what levels, and they were through the roof, because obviously no one knew what to do, so they kept turning up that dose.
Yeah.
And I was given therapy for generalized anxiety and depression, and I didn't realize the medication was causing like a suicidal, I suppose, symptom, which can happen.
Yes.
But no one was aware of this. So I don't want to place blame, but I'm going to say that I think the care that I received as a child wasn't great. However, to be fair, back then it was obviously less progressive than what it is now. And that really created a huge issue for me, because it was hard to know what was there before and what was medical related. And if I came off these medications, what would happen? And it was a real battle for me. And I wonder what would have happened if I had been medicated for ADHD from the beginning and diagnosed properly, because I obviously have lost a lot in those 3 years in terms of attempting suicide, drug, alcohol use, medicating symptoms because I was so unhappy. And those years I still look back on as the most horrific 3 years of my life, even though I've lost both parents that I was very close to.
Yeah.
Obviously lived a full life, and I would still say that point was by far my lowest, which is why I'm so passionate about diagnosing women and girls now.
Yes.
So that's where the drive comes from mainly, because that didn't need to be there. And I'm very passionate about people getting diagnosed correctly now, clearly for that reason. So over the next 20 years, I have had a burnout battle my whole life, anxiety, depression, just going around in a circle. I've been in therapy for since I was 14.
Yeah.
And no one had ever been able to tell me what it was. So they, teach me how to do work-life balance, blah, blah, blah. But because I'm so hyperactive and ADHD can be quite fixated on something, I would work for 6 months, burn myself out, go insane, and then have to have 6 months off work. And then I started to get diagnosed with bipolar, which I walked out and thought, I don't have that. I know I don't have that. But the psychiatrist said to me, oh, Jane, you need to be on lithium. You shouldn't have children. You need to be on this medication. You can't have a baby with it. And I was like, this is just horrible.
You knew it wasn't right.
I knew it wasn't right. However, I had also learnt not to trust a medical professional and their sole opinion from my childhood. Yeah. There's a lot of women out there now that contact me that have missed the chance of having children because they were misdiagnosed with bipolar. So when you start to unpack it, it gives me goosebumps, because I'd still get quite angry, even though it's no one's specific fault, but I think there just needs to be more work done in this area. So for me, I went on to have 3 children. I got married, and I was just in burnout all the time. So I'm very hyperactive, very impulsive, and I would start a new business. I would buy a property, turn it into an Airbnb. I was running 2 massive companies, 2 multi-million-dollar companies, because obviously my work ethic is through the roof. I can't relax. Sounds like a good thing, but it actually is a recipe for insanity.
Yeah.
So perfectionism comes along with ADHD as well. So I was running these 2 massive companies. I had 3 kids under 4. And I kept taking on new tasks, and then I'd try and give them to my husband, right? So we ended up going to marriage counselling, and I love marriage counselling because often people turn up like, there's something wrong with that one. Can you fix him, please? Or there's something wrong with her. She's the problem. So you both go there ready for the other person to be the issue. And the psychologist who actually used to be an assessor in the Caboolture Hospital and he worked with women and females, he ended up saying to me, I think you need to come and do some one-on-one. And he said to me in a session, I think you have ADHD. And I laughed in his face. I said to him, those people are not productive. I don't know who you think those people are, but you don't know me. And that was when I first discovered masking, because I had 2 phones on the office table. All of them had alarms. All of them rung off the hook. I was always late. I had all this stuff going on. Then I'd have an agenda. Then I'd go off on one thing. Then I'd go to the other. And he just said to me, you just need to stop and answer the questions. And when he said to me things like, so where do you have to be next Tuesday? Do you know what you have on? I said to him, of course I do. I'm not an idiot. But then I would have to look at my phone. And he said to me, you're scaffolding everything because you are not as attentive as you think you are. And when he actually went through the criteria with me, I said to him at the end, yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying.
Wow.
And I called my best friend, and her husband has ADHD, and she said to me, oh, that's it. I've always wanted to know what was going on with you because I've always been on a roller coaster.
Yes.
You ring me one week, I'm living in a different state. Like, I'm all over the place. Career changes. And I've always been very successful, but erratic. And
unsustainable.
And unsustainable, impulsive. Like, I would just see something and just go. And again, that's not everyone with ADHD. That's a hyperactive, impulsive presentation. There's a lot of people that are inattentive to an extreme too, where you give them one job and they just can't do it.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this one little tiny thing? And it's really difficult when you then have to scaffold and mask that to people and pretend to be okay. So I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I went home and told my husband, and we had a bit of a laugh about it. And he said to me, let's not medicate. He's in the health professional, like he's a physical health person. He owned gyms, PT, bodybuilding. He's like, no, you're not taking medication. And I said to him, oh, yeah, I'm fine. So we tried all the exercise supplements, did all that. I had 3 kids as well. And throughout me trying that, this is the level of impulsivity that I have. Such an ADHD quality is to address the problems you've created, but to make another thing to do that you like to do that's more interesting than addressing the problems. Instead of addressing the burnout and the situation I had created, I decided that we would go drive around Australia in a caravan for a year with our 3 children under 5.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm a very convincing sales lady because I had that caravan bought. We didn't view it. We bought it in 12 hours. We had it delivered because we didn't know how to drive it. And we packed up and left a couple of weeks later. And my husband, we all jumped in the car, and he goes, how do you drive a caravan? I said, I don't know. And he goes, where are we going? I said, I don't know. That's the level of hyperactive
Jane.
that I have. Like, it's insane.
Gosh,
So you can imagine going around in this circle feeling, but the part that people don't get that don't have ADHD is it feels real. It feels so real. It seems ridiculous to other people, but for you, it's real. I still do not know what is an insane idea and what's actually smart.
Okay, yeah.
And because I'm quite high-powered, like I'm quite successful, I also get a lot of positive reinforcement for all of my ADHD. So it's very confusing.
Yes.
So we went away on this caravan trip, which you can imagine, we're 5 for 5 with ADHD in my family. You can imagine us in a caravan with no plan. Like, it was a complete mess.
Yeah.
We would go along the Gib with no food. No water, no petrol. It was an absolute debacle. Everywhere we went was a debacle. Yeah. But we had a great time, and when we came back, I was so burnt out. And my kids had got to a point where I'd started to realise that, perhaps ADHD, kind of bleeds out everywhere. What is going on? And I took one of my children to be assessed, and then she took a look at all 3 of them and went, whoa, the one that you're saying is fine is probably the most severe, and I don't understand, Jane, why you're not medicated. It was like I was waiting for permission. I said, oh, I don't need it. She's like, I feel like for you to actually get these children the help that they need, you're going to have to look after yourself. Yeah. So I spent about $3,500 on a psychiatrist, right? Because that's how expensive it is. It took me 5 appointments to find the right medication. They offer you, there's so many different types, and you only get offered one at a time. It's very expensive.
Yes.
Took me a long time to find the right one. There's 2 stimulant types. Ritalin is the one that most people know. There's another type called dexamphetamine. When I first took a dexamphetamine, I cried. I cried and cried because it was only about 10 minutes in that I realized that other people had been living so much easier. It's like
Wow.
driving a manual car your whole life and then realizing that everyone else is on automatic. This has been so unfair.
You've been doing
No wonder
things
I
so hard.
so hard. And I took that dexamphetamine and I was like, and it's funny because it's not a productive drug, right? It's not that you have any more speed. It means that you actually de-escalate. So for me, my cognitive hyperactivity is next level. I don't know anyone who would have as many thoughts that I would have. It's insane how fast my brain is. And it actually slowed down. And for the first time, I sat down on the couch and had a cup of tea and just sat and just relaxed. My husband came home and I actually had lunch with him and we had a chat. And he's like, "Are you all right?" I said to him, "I took one of those dexamphetamine things. I mean, I feel like I haven't done much." And I said, "But I feel quite relaxed. I feel so calm." When my kids came home from school, I sat down and played Uno with them. I'd never done that before.
Oh,
I felt like I had so much time and I wasn't like inundated with things to do. I didn't, and for me, it was anxiety. And it's not that anxiety isn't there when you have ADHD. It's comorbid, right? Like the chance, I haven't met an ADHD woman that doesn't have anxiety. I haven't met one yet. It's not that anxiety doesn't exist and it's ADHD. It's that the stimulant drug for ADHD absolutely reduces for me and cognitive hyperactivity the amount of thoughts.
yes.
So if you already have anxiety, right, and you've got anxious thoughts, prepare yourself for an avalanche if you have ADHD as well, because it's just that it slows down all the thoughts. And for me, when I first took that medication, I was like, right, well, here's my life now. This is who I am. I can never not be medicated again.
Yes.
Because I am so happy. I'm such a better mother, wife. And that was why I started the podcast. I am actually a very private person. I've got no interest in being a public figure. But for me, I just was having so many coffees with people and having chats that I started recording it. And it was never meant to be a big thing. But because there's no Australian podcast about ADHD in women, it has become that purely because people have spread it.
Yes.
And I keep doing it because there's so many women that ask me to continue because they're continuing to get these life-changing diagnoses and medication, and that's really why I do it.
And you want to understand yourself, and you want to hear the stories of other women who have walked in your shoes and had similar experiences, or just talking to someone about a challenge as big as this, who gets it, who understands, who can listen, but also can share a little bit. I mean, that is so healing in itself. It's therapeutic, obviously not healing in the sense that ADHD will always be, a part of your life, but it's so therapeutic. And I didn't mention, you are a speaker and an author and a podcaster, and Jane will share, I'll make sure Jane shares all of the ways that you can connect with her and learn from her and work with her when we're sort of at the end of the conversation. But I've got so many questions that have just been coming to mind as you've been sharing, and I really appreciate the fact that you were able to walk us through kind of how it all unfolded for you and what your early experiences were like as a child, and just how damaging and devastating it was for you to be missed. And I was saying to you off air, wasn't I, that I've been reading a paper to learn more about ADHD in women called misdiagnosis. And it's the idea that so many women like yourself are learning this about them and getting the right diagnosis so late in life. And you're still a young woman, but it's way overdue. And this was all so recent for you, wasn't it? This was 2022 when you were diagnosed. Am I correct in remembering?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was.
Yeah.
It was really recent, and it's actually really improved the ADHD area even in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I probably should say as well that ADHD and autism go hand in hand. I call it a very low fence. So 70% around about, and again, the research isn't there enough. So there's a lot of people that say, if you Google it or if you look up research, they speculate that 70% of ADHDs are also autistic. I think people are coming out as ADHD because there's less stigma But I don't think people are really embracing or understanding what being autistic is. And after I was medicated for long enough, so if you think about neurodivergence is kind of like being a two-hander, right? Like, so I was eventually diagnosed as autistic as well.
Yes.
And the reason that that happened was because I was medicated for ADHD, and ADHD acts as a shield. It does. And I actually reminisce about the times when I wasn't medicated for ADHD because they were fun. You don't think anything through, and it's just like a shield. Like you go into a group, you got a fun story. You're the life of the party. You can't stop talking. Everything's exciting. You're off. Oh, wow, we'll go to this next club. It's all exciting. But when I was medicated properly for ADHD, after a while, I realized it was devastating because, I thought I was done. I was like, oh, I've got the answer.
Yes.
And I was like, why am I having all this other stuff happen now? God, what's wrong
Like what?
with me?
What were you experiencing?
Like, for example, if you have an ADHD shield and then you put that down, there's often things underneath.
Yeah.
And if 70% of people that have ADHD are also autistics, and 70% of those people that take those ADHD medications now have what I call as nerves on the outside of your body. So now you feel everything deeply. You think about everything deeply. The anxiety that goes along with being autistic is very intense. Yes. And suddenly you don't have enough information about where the car park is with your kids, and then you can't go. And there's all this sensory stuff that for me came up where I just couldn't function. So for example, one of my biggest bugbears with people talking about ADHD at the moment is that I think a lot of the people are actually autistic as well, but they don't know that necessarily. So they list off autistic symptoms. Let me just give you an example.
Sure.
So when I talk about sensory sensitivity, there's a very, very strong difference in, let's just take noise for an example. I'm very noise sensitive. As a mother, you can imagine it's horrible. Yeah. There's TVs going, there's iPads running, everyone's mum, 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 mum. My hubby's over the top, there's a dog barking, and it's just, like, before I was medicated, my mind was so busy I barely noticed it.
Oh.
Then the medication stopped and I'm suddenly like plagued, like it's overwhelming. I feel like I have to get out of the house. I'm like, I can't be here. It feels almost painful. And I was like, I can't cope. Like you start to feel almost breathless. Like this is too much. And you don't realize that you're actually going towards a full autistic meltdown that you don't know you have, right? And you're thinking, I'm going all over the place. And, Tony Atwood says it really well that often a depressive episode can actually be an autistic meltdown. So I would have my head in my hands. My husband would be trying to comfort me. He'd be asking me what the problem was. I'd tell him a problem and then he'd try and solve it. And even if he solved it, it wouldn't be right. It was like catastrophic.
Yes.
Like I'd be almost can't talk, like just in a complete mess, and I'd sit in the walk-in robe in the dark.
Okay, yeah.
What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Whereas ADHD noise sensitivity would be like, I'm trying to write an email and the TV's blaring. I can't concentrate on this sentence because the TV's going. Or I can't phase out that person chewing and I'm trying to write this down.
Yes.
It's not like I have to get out because I'm going to die here.
You're going to explode. Like a doom feeling. Yeah, a doom feeling. And you instinctively knew you needed to be in the wardrobe where it was dark, where it was quiet, because you needed to have that sensory deprivation to enable your whole body and your nervous system to be able to recalibrate. And so you instinctively knew what you needed, even though you couldn't articulate what the problem was. Gosh, the way you've explained it makes so much sense, because you've talked about masking and you've talked about this shield, and that once the shield of ADHD comes down, like you say, when you've got the right medication, which was obviously a really big and very expensive journey for you, then the other challenges that have been hidden reveal themselves. And so, and that was only this year, 2024, that you were diagnosed with autism, correct?
Yeah, it was at the start of the year. I'd had the symptoms for a while, but I hadn't prioritized myself.
Okay, yes.
And to be honest, people that just take a stimulant and that have some sensory stuff come up, I really urge people to go back to a professional. I didn't, because I do have an issue, obviously, with trauma, with trusting psychiatrists, right?
Yes.
So I should have gone back. I didn't. And I let it go too long. And really they probably need to be on something else, like you really need a two-prong approach. I take a ADHD non-stimulant medication, which is actually like almost like an anti-anxiety for me. But an anti-anxiety for me doesn't necessarily work the right way because I already have too many thoughts, right? I have to stop the thoughts coming. And the quality of the thoughts is a different question, because obviously just straight anxiety is the quality of the thought. But an avalanche of not very good thoughts are a real problem. So I have to do both things. I have to stop the amount of thoughts and then improve the quality of the thoughts.
Right.
Whereas I think just a generalized anxiety medication wouldn't work for me. Might work for some people that do have, that are autistic and have ADHD, but for me, that just doesn't work.
And it's very much a process, isn't it, whereby you wean onto a medication. Actually, I really should ask this as a question, because I'm coming from my own perspective and the experience I have with other people's walks with medication and anxiety that I'm very familiar with. That we wean on, but it takes a long time to know if it's effective, and then we have to wean off, and then we have to have a washout period and then you start something new. And so with the ADHD medication, from what you said before about, is it called dexamphetamine?
Correct. Yeah. So there's two arms of it. There's Ritalin, which is the one that everyone knows, most people know, and then there's dexamphetamine, and there are two types of stimulants. What people don't understand is that people are biologically wired to like one and not like the other.
Right.
So if you go and take a Ritalin, or you get a Ritalin from a psychiatrist and it doesn't work for you, often people don't realize you can go back, right? You go, I tried the medication, didn't work. They don't understand, and it sucks because it's like $350 out of pocket to go back and ask for something else. So I can see why people don't do it.
Yeah.
But if you wait around long enough and you're persistent like I am, you eventually get offered more different types. So there's two different types of stimulants. If one works for you, great. The other one might not. You generally have an affinity towards one or the other.
Okay.
Some people find the stimulants too much and it doesn't work for them. If that's the case, there is a non-stimulant medication as well. And they're generally broken up into inattentive type symptoms and hyperactive type symptoms. The generally you like one or the other, and that is probably more of a generic one that I suppose people can use without needing, like if you have a heart condition or you can't take a stimulant, you don't like the stimulants, you can go to a non-stimulant. And then, then there's obviously the SSRIs, the SNRIs, which, the general population can take.
Yes.
But the stimulants are a really interesting one, because a short-acting dexamphetamine or Ritalin, in 10 minutes if it's going to work for you or not. I call it as ad lib as like a Panadol. I say it's an ADHD Panadol because you can take it. It lasts for 3 or 4 hours and it's really quick. So for people that are wondering if they have it or not, there's obviously questionnaires, there's self-tests on my website, there's all that there.
Yes.
But really, if you're taking an ADHD medication that's prescribed for you and it works, you have it. ADHD is a neurological condition. It's not, your brain wiring is different.
Yes.
So pretty quick. No, I love it how people say, oh, they're taking unnecessary ADHD medication. I don't think so, because if it works, right? So you can't go, I don't think I have this. It's like, well, if you have it because you're taking the medication, it works or it doesn't.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And this is the thing. It's treatable, it's manageable, and early diagnosis is so important. And I'd love you to share a bit more about the fact that it is a neurological condition that does affect impulsivity and attention and like the ability to focus. And I guess the sort of the generalized kind of view is or picture that people might have is of a child in a classroom can't sit still, can't focus, can't get their work done. But that's just sort of the tip of the iceberg. So could you please just explain a little bit more about the brain, the 3 different types, and for listeners to, like, obviously what you've shared with your story and your experiences, there are going to be listeners who are going, wow, actually, this could be me. But can you share a little bit more to paint a clearer picture so that anyone listening can have a proper understanding of ADHD, what it means in the brain, and why does a stimulant make all the difference? Because I know that there'll be a biochemical reason for this, which might be bit deep for us today. But I think on the face of it, with hyperactivity, how does a stimulant slow things down? That's something I'm curious about. And that, anyway, so I've asked so many questions, which I do all the time, Jane. So really, could you just paint a really clear picture for us of ADHD in the brain? And if we can talk a bit about the medication and why it's so powerful, that would be amazing.
Yeah, awesome. So as I said, ADHD is a neurological condition. So this isn't a attitude or a lifestyle thing, or sometimes people like to have tomato sauce on their chips and other people like barbecue. Like, this is an actual I suppose treatable and diagnosable condition. I think we're going to get there in time, in that we will be able to diagnose people earlier. We will be able to screen way earlier, like physical, because we know that if we scan the brain, there's physiological differences in the brain. We know that. Yeah. And one of the reasons why I changed my views on medication, I said that I wouldn't medicate my kids initially. However, I've changed my views on that. Yeah. And one of the reasons is because if you scan an ADHD child's brain, we know that there's about a 30%, I suppose I wouldn't want to say, well, we know it's a 30% developmental delay, but we also know that the brain looks different and it's smaller. It's, I suppose, looks less healthy if you look at the scans of two brains, right? Mm. And the reason I medicate my ADHD children, and a lot of people say, oh, well, why would you medicate them? Because they're not disruptive, or they're learning okay, or they're average at school. So why label them, right? That's my absolute pet hate, is because I don't want them to grow up with, having to medicate their symptoms with alcohol or drugs.
Yes.
And we know that long-term unemployment's an issue. Drug, alcohol addiction. We know that eating disorders are an issue. We know that there's more people in jail that are neurodiverse than any other type of brain. Like, we know that. They've studied in the US brain types, and now they're screened for neurodiversity, and it's 1 in 3 in the US at the moment, research-wise. So it's not that it's absolutely different. And from that, you can actually start to develop the brain. So I medicate my 3 children, and I will continue to do that.
Yes.
Whether they are underachieving at school or not, I don't care, because I want them to have a chance at having a normal brain.
Yes.
We know with neuroplasticity, if we medicate a child, we diagnose, we medicate, we intervene with therapy, we get them to understand themselves, they pick a good career path. We know that by the time they're 25, they actually have a very good chance of having a neurotypical brain. For me, at this point, 37, I've got no hope. I have to medicate. I can't do the simplest of tasks. I don't have the executive function. But I'm hoping that by the time the prefrontal cortex develops with my 3 children,
yes,
they will be able to make good decisions and come off medication. This is not a life sentence of medication for a child. This is a chance at actually healing their brain. And that is why I medicate my children, even though a lot of people would say there's, and I'm, air quoting here, nothing wrong with them. Yeah, they're average, but I tell you what, I gave my 6-year-old an ADHD non-stimulant medication. The teacher said to me, I don't know why you do that. He's great. Okay, really, is he? Because within 1 month, he went from the bottom 20% reading to average. He went from average maths to gifted. In under a month, he did that with proper medication. And I just think, if your child's average, let's say, and they're not struggling, why would I do that to them? Well, how about letting them meet their potential? How about that?
Yes.
Because I tell you what, my 6-year-old, who I didn't think was very bright, and the school said to me, he's dyslexic, you should get him tested, he's in the bottom of everything. And I thought, oh, really? I'm a bit surprised by that. He's actually gifted in music, maths, coding, and he's absolutely killing it now. Whereas he'd said to me a few months ago, I'm dumb, I can't learn. And all he was hearing was negativity.
Oh, that was his identity that he was creating for himself. Yes.
And all he was hearing was negativity. I'm in the bottom group again. I can't learn that. Suddenly he walks around and he's got his chest out. He's like, I'm in the top maths group. It's easy for me. Because, we know that ADHD kids are going to get 30,000 more pieces of negative information coming at them before they're 12. So their self-esteem is going to be really not great with that kind of negative information coming in. And then people say, why would you medicate and label a child? It's like, because he's just labelled himself dumb.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to medicate him and tell him that his brain's a bit different. because otherwise he's just said that he's dumb.
Oh my goodness. Like if you could see my face when you said about the 30,000 pieces of more pieces of negative information by the time they're 12. I mean, that is just, I mean, I am so grateful to you for talking to us about the brain, about the fact that the medication gives the brain an opportunity to actually heal. And if there's the potential for by 25 for that brain to scan as a normal brain, I mean, that is absolutely incredible. And like you say, at 37, you've lost that opportunity. That opportunity was lost. Your brother was medicated. You weren't. And things are so different now, and their understanding is growing, and it's growing, and people like yourself are obviously leading the way. But just, I'm really, really surprised. And, you know, the identity and the way our kids view themselves, I've known for a long time how important that is. And you know, even with young boys with sport, for example, which is not related at all to, you know, the neurological function, but just if a young boy does not see themselves as a, air quotes, sporty kid, then they will remove themselves and they will give up, and they identify as being, I'm not good at that, and it has repercussions in terms of their social inclusion, their self-esteem, their confidence, and their willingness to get involved in things that are really good for them, their body and their brain and their mental health. And this identity piece is so powerful. So, oh my gosh, I've got so much I want to ask, but and we'll talk again, hopefully on the podcast again, because we only have so much time today. But I've got another question that I want to ask, and I think it really speaks to this idea of this underdiagnosis of girls. For parents listening who are thinking, right, I know now, I understand that there is this underdiagnosis of girls, what should parents be looking for in their girls? And I imagine it's the same in boys as well, but let's just stick with girls because of the underrepresentation and your forte and your expertise in this space. What would a parent, because some parents might be going, oh, I never thought that my child might have ADHD. What can parents look for in their child that might warrant going and sort of making the first step towards asking more questions of their GP? Or I guess the second part of this is, if you're considering, wonder if this could be something that's going on for my child, what would be the first step to take to start to get some answers to that question?
Yeah, it's a great question, because anxiety and ADHD go hand in hand, and it's more of a question. I mean, the anxiety is going to be there. I don't think there's many people that have ADHD and they don't have anxiety. It's more of a question of, is there something under the anxiety? And I would never just get one opinion and go with that, ever. Yeah. I think you've got to constantly ask the question. Every 6 to 12 months, I would be thinking, is this ADHD, especially if it's treatment resistant? Treatment-resistant depression and anxiety is a red flag for me. I see a lot of it in the women, and again, me, treatment-resistant. How much treatment have I had? Still the same, 20 years later. Yeah. And then you just start thinking, what's wrong with me? Clearly I'm crazy because nothing's working. Yeah. So, and you don't want to have your child feel like that too. Oh, I've been going to see this, this lady or this man talking about my feelings. I take this tablet. I'm not getting any better. Yeah. Why? Yeah.
Must be me.
I've had that. It's awful. So for me, if you had a child, I would break it up in 2 ways. Okay. And this is not necessarily, this is just my own lived experience and I suppose my background in mental health. I split it into 2 ways: externalizing ADHD and autistic, and internalizing. Now, I specialize in internalizing. That is my area of love because no one understands it, or people don't understand it well enough. Yeah. Externalizing, people get, that's the 8-year-old kid. He's bored. He wants to leave the classroom. I'm going to hit someone. I'm going to run away. I'm going to run into traffic. I'm going to, burn the house down. I'm being a bit of a laugh with it, but I have those kids. So I'm not saying it in a, I have kids that do some pretty crazy things.
That's a little window into your life. That sounds really, really
no,
tough.
I've got kids that jump up on fences and try to jump off and they break limbs. It's,
a lot of risk taking by the sounds of things.
Oh, absolutely. The risk taking is through the roof. And they're the kids that are recognised. The teachers see it. They back them. The peds see it. Okay, great. But the internalising are a little bit different. And I think the internalizing is what I really want to kind of talk about. And that's typically more girls,
Okay.
typically.
Yes.
But it's not always. I've got 3 kids. I've got one externalizer.
Yep.
I've got an internalizing boy and I've got an internalizing girl.
Right.
It can be both. So with the internalizing ADHD, I would be looking, like generally the teachers don't see it, right? If you have an internalizing child, I've got 2 of them, and the teachers say to me, there's nothing, they're angelic, they're beautiful.
Yes. Okay.
They're going so well. And I mean, with my oldest daughter, I had the principal email me from her school and tell me to go get counselling because there's nothing wrong with my child. And that was with a clinical psychologist report, an OT and a GP, all backing me. And the principal said to me in an email, you should go get your own mental health because your daughter is fine.
Oh my
and
goodness.
You're the problem.
Oh my goodness,
So
that's
we
shocking.
obviously left that school. But so if the teacher says that they're fine, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
If the GP says they're fine, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
That if you're seeing stuff, I would still be following your gut.
Yeah.
And people have got a problem with TikTok. There's nothing wrong with TikTok. That's how you learn information. And yes, you should go to reputable sources. Obviously, all the information isn't great, but there's some really great people. If you look at their qualifications and make sure that they're on the money, you might actually start to pick up what it is that you're seeing and the why, because actually that helps a mother advocate for themselves. When they are told, and I was told about 8 times that there was nothing wrong with my oldest child before she finally got help. So I would be looking at things like, for example, so what we're talking about is what is ADHD and what is anxiety. So let me list off what is in ADHD that is not in anxiety, which I think is probably more important. So, for example, an ADHD child is going to have some problems possibly with social cues. So, for example, you do see those kids, they're too much. And I mean, most ADHD people are being called too much. I get being called too much all the time, and I don't mean it in a mean way, but we do get called we're too much. We stand a bit close. We don't understand when enough's enough. Sometimes you'll get the kids that will kick the ball over the fence because they want something to happen. Sometimes the girls are really hyperactive and the other girls are like, can we not just sit down and just like play this little game? And the other kid's like raring to go. Socially, sometimes they have some problems. And it's not that they're autistic necessarily and they can't read the cues. That's not what I'm saying. That's a different thing. What I'm saying is they're too busy. They can't read it because they're off thinking about something else. They're doing something else. They don't realise when they run in and that someone's already playing a game, that their game, maybe they should wait a second and wait for them to finish the game before overtaking everybody. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like they're too busy, they're too intense, they're too excited, or they don't understand, they're very impatient. That can be all red flags in the internalizing one. Teachers often say they're not meeting their potential because they're not concentrating. That's a red flag. Also, excessive talking, interrupting, not having an off switch.
Okay.
Their thoughts coming in all the time. ADHD and perfectionism is quite linked. So you might see, like, for example, this is like an ADHD-related anxiety, which would be around, I usually forget something. So I'm going to pack it all the night before and stress about it. And now I can't eat because all I'm thinking about is if I'll forget that piece of homework. So they start getting used to the fact of like that they fail. Like, oh, everyone had their hat. I didn't. I knew it was red t-shirt day. Why didn't I remember? They start to realize that they're not quite there. And that can sometimes make them really overzealous.
Yes.
Too much anxiety. And they start masking, camouflaging, going, oh, I can do that too. Yeah, no worries. I would have bought the t-shirt. I just forgot. And they start to cover it over. This is why teachers and stuff don't see it, because often society pressure to be perfect, to be the good girl, to get it done, overplays them, and then they just are in overdrive. Then a few teachers tell them they need to try harder, and now that's just what they're thinking. I always thought as a mother, I'm just not trying hard enough. Actually, I was really disadvantaged because I'm driving my manual car and everyone else is in automatic and I'm just trying harder, which is not the problem. So I would be looking at that, treatment-resistant anxiety, treatment-resistant depression, sensory. So, for example, if your child's doing their homework and the TV's on and they have to turn it off, they're telling you to be quiet, they're getting too distracted, that kind of thing. Also, boredom. ADHD people, which is different to someone who's just anxious, they're very excitable in that they will have something that they're doing and they're going to do it real hard, really intensely for a short period, a hyper focus.
Yep.
And then they're off and they've they had to have the art supplies. It only lasted 2 weeks and now they're into horse riding.
Yes.
It's like if they're bored, they start
Yeah.
to flick around.
Yeah.
One of my ADHD children is very troublesome where he's bored. He stirs trouble. He wants something to happen. So they don't sit quietly that well, some of them. So everyone looks different. But if you're not sure, I'd even play a board game. Playing a board game with a ADHD child is always interesting because they either can't wait their turn and they're losing their mind, everyone else is taking too long,
Right.
or they're like so inattentive they don't even know when it's their turn.
Oh,
If you have a look at something like
lose
that,
track of where the game's up to. Yeah.
yeah, like I can pick it out now really easy in like a pass the parcel in the birthday. I'm like, oh, that poor kid, he's phased out again. He's off. He doesn't know. He's forgotten he's playing.
Yes.
You can see it sitting there. I would continue to try and rule it out over and over again. I see a lot of people that just go to one person, they get told it's not that, and then that's it. But you're trusting like one person and you're trusting the symptoms or the traits that are there at the moment to really show it.
Yes.
And that's difficult too because it's different. You've met one person with ADHD, like you've listened to this podcast with me in the episode. I don't fit you exactly. That doesn't mean it presents very differently.
Yeah.
But regardless, the neurological brain difference is still there.
Yes.
So if you go ahead, get diagnosed and take medication, you would know. So for me, I would always ask the question with long-term anxiety whether it is something else, because if they are having an avalanche of thoughts and you don't know and they're covering it up, it just leads, I suppose, to a really long road of a mental health battle that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot is that someone will say, I've been in therapy for 25 years. I can't believe it.
Yes. And with the anxiety, what we know is that with anxiety, whether it's the normal anxiety you get because you're about to do something that is a stretch or is really important or is a challenge like a job interview, and that anxiety will settle down, or if it's anxiety that is sort of frequent and constant, like the kind of anxiety that I live with, there's so much in the way of those physical symptoms, aren't there? And so if the anxiety, is the upset tummy and the racing heart and the breathing changes and the trembling and the focus of the attention or the difficulty, focus of your attention on a threat, which means that you might not be able to pay attention to other things that are more important. You can start to kind of see from what Jane shared, and also, we can talk more in another episode, that there is there is a lot to unpack, and that ADHD shows in many ways, as you've just shared, that there are the externalizing, which are symptoms and signs which are more obvious, and probably that more stereotypical ADHD kind of viewpoint. There are the internalizing symptoms, and there are also the hyperactive, the inattentive, and then the combination. So there's a lot. We've only been able to sort of scrape the surface today, but I really do feel as though what you've shared with us, Jane, is going to help listeners today to start to think about themselves, start to think about the people they know and love and their own families. And this might be an episode really worth sharing. Obviously, there's a risk of maybe sharing an episode like this and somebody being really offended that you've shared it, I suppose. I don't know, Jane, what do you think?
Oh yeah, no, I've done that. I've done that, Jodie. I've done that. I've actually said that to someone over dinner, sent them the link, and they were like completely offended. I've done it.
Yeah.
However, in saying that, it's like a shared friend, and then there's like a couple of us that are to the side going, in 2 years' time, she's going to see it.
It's just a matter of
we've
time.
had a bit of a laugh about it. I've been messaging
Yeah.
her. I'm like, how's your ADHD going? And she usually responds with like, ha, go away. You think everyone has it. I'm like, no, but you actually do.
Oh, goodness. Oh, okay. Tread gently, people. Tread gently. But I mean, these resources, you and your podcast as well. So, Jane, before you tell us about where people can connect with you and work with you, if somebody's suspecting that they need to get some professional insight into whether or not ADHD might be something that they're dealing with or one of their children, where do you recommend people go first?
I think if you're unsure, the first thing to do would be to go onto my website and click on self-test and put your details in and get a really good self-test. There's so many self-tests out there, but you want to make sure you're in an accurate one. I've got the accurate science-based ADHD test, which is completely different to just going on Google. So go in there and have a look. I've got camouflaging, masking options. It's all there for kids, adults, everybody. I would go in there and have a look. It will spit out straight away where you are on the threshold. Then you will know whether to maybe pursue it. If you were looking for some examples, what I love about my own podcast, which sounds weird, is I do a 50% breakup on experts versus everyday mums. So I bring on everyday mums, Aussie mums, and we go through what life looks like for them with ADHD, being autistic, PTSD, whatever's going on. And we go through what it looks like. If you want to feel validated and have a relatable experience, I would go on and just assess whether you feel any sense of like, okay, that's me or not. I've also got an episode where I go through with two friends, one has ADHD, one doesn't, and we go through their morning routine and we show what an ADHD mum does and what a neurotypical mum does and how it looks different. And I tell you, it's polar opposites.
So interesting.
That's a really interesting one too, if you're like, do I have this or not?
Yeah.
So that would be probably where I would start. In terms of, I suppose, diagnosis, I do have some resources. They're free. If you were an adult, I would be asking myself if you're wanting to try medication. If you want to try medication, I would go straight to a psychiatrist. There's some great telehealth ones. I've got a Facebook group and we all share where the psychiatrists are that can actually pick this up, because by booking one in, that doesn't guarantee that you don't get somebody that tells you that you're an anxious mum and you've got a parenting problem.
Yes.
Because that happens all the time. And I hate to see people that wait a year, spend their money, and then get told there's nothing wrong with you when they actually have ADHD. So probably jump into the Facebook group and have a look at the assessment to see where to go with people that really understand this. Yes. And again, with children, I strongly believe in medication, purely because I believe the brain can heal. And there's research behind that. I'm happy to provide it if people want to have a look. I wasn't pro-medication before. I didn't used to take Panadol. Now, after I've seen the research, I suppose the benefits are there. And I'm so concerned about, the people in prison, unemployed, drug and alcohol, the risk-taking that people do to medicate their symptoms. I think all kids deserve the right to be diagnosed and make their own choices, I suppose is my big view.
Yes. Yes. And I'm so grateful to you. And it's worth every listener knowing, because I've never really said this before, I'm very careful about who I have on the podcast. I get lots of people writing to me all the time saying, can you put this person on the podcast, or this person's written a book? I am so careful to always and only ever interview people that I would put my own personal trust in, as a mum, as a woman, as a friend, as a sister, as a brother. I'm not a brother, as a sister. How funny is that? I'm getting carried away. But so Jane, I really value your work. I know how reputable you are, and I know you're so humble, and it none of us sort of like to sell, but we've got something that we have available to make a difference in service of other people to help. And so I love that you've got that evidence-based quiz, you've got your Facebook group, and you also work with women. You work with women one-on-one, I presume. And yes, can you tell us a little bit about that?
I do. So I also own a psychology company, this is purely a passion project. But we are, I suppose, beginning an assessment arm purely because there's just not enough out there. And I also have a very strong belief in the neuroaffirming therapy. And, anyone amongst neurodiversity knows that there's a view from some therapists that, ADHD and autism should be kind of like, I suppose, pushed down or, taught to behave neurotypically, taught to cover it up, and that you're not okay. And I am all about embracing who you are. And I believe that all the therapy needs to change. Practitioners need to change. They need to have, I want my children to be okay with who they are. There's nothing wrong with who they are. I'm 100% sure my son is going to build an app. I want him to understand who he is and build an app. I don't want him to work in a government job where he's bored and he's wondering why he can't do all these things. So embracing who you are and having these kids with therapists and practitioners who actually get them and make that okay.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to happen, because when we look at mental health in this country, we're in absolute crisis. Yet it's not talked enough by the government, but our suicide rate is higher than ever. So what are we doing? Yeah. What are we doing about it? And for me, let's just not pretend it's not there. Yeah. It's there. We need to make a difference. We need to make a change. And for me, I'm trying to push out neuroaffirming practitioner training to, if there is such a high prevalence of neurodiversity in this country, why are we not changing the therapy approaches and making it okay for them? Why are we continuing to teach them to be neurotypical as if there's something wrong with them?
That's it.
And I think for me, that's where I really sit a little angry, which is why I don't want to sit in anger and point at things that aren't working. I want to create change by providing those for people.
Yes.
That's what I really want to do.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you're doing. And anyone listening will know just from this conversation, the way you speak, the way you share, and how passionate you are, that the work you're doing is really impactful. And, you know, and I love that you've got different avenues that people can connect, and the idea that they can also get some recommendations for psychiatrists that will be supportive and are going to be not going to be a waste of time, not going to be a waste of money, and people that can be trusted. That is priceless. That is priceless. You know, money's tight. No, you know, few families have money to spare, and so kind of, and it's also it decreases the time spent looking for the right answers. So you offer so much, and I'll put links to everything that Jane offers in the show notes. And Jane, I really want to thank you again. It's been just a joy connecting with you. We didn't get as much time as I would have loved to hang out at the conference on the Gold Coast, but thank you for coming and introducing yourself, and I'm so pleased to be connected. And yeah, thank you very, very much for your time talking with me on the podcast today. I'm super grateful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jodie. I thought it was a bit of a risk when I came in there and said, hello, and you were like, yes, yeah, that sounds great. I was actually a bit surprised.
Oh, gosh, no, not at all. It was, I was honestly rapt that you did so, because, you know, I really feel with the podcast, you know, like you do with your own, you know that, you know, it's often a big labour of love, podcasting. And I'm very lucky now. I feel so grateful that I'm here in the studios of Positive Media, and that we collaborate with the podcast, and my podcast is now under that wing. So nearly 3 years of podcasting, and now I've got help, which is amazing. Honestly, you would know what that means. But I just feel so strongly about what we can't solve anybody's problem here and now in a conversation, but what we can do is we can connect people with the right information, and I can connect listeners with the people who can help them with the troubles that they're having, or even identify, hey, hang on a second, like, oh, I never thought about this could be a possibility for me. And all of a sudden people have just a different way of looking at things, and might start to sort of ask different questions and the right questions, and support themselves and support their kids. And that, I think, is a real gift. That's what I love about having this what I feel is a real privileged position to talk to people like you. So thank you again. Really, really loved this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Jodie, for having me.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you, listeners. Thank you so much again. I love being with you on this Wednesday weekly podcast, and I really hope that you took a lot from this conversation, no matter where ADHD plays a role in your own life or in the lives of family or friends or other people that you know or work with, or perhaps you're a teacher in a school. I really hope you learned a lot. I certainly did, and I'll definitely be inviting Jane back to talk to me again. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your company. And if you enjoyed it, if you could please jump on and rate the podcast and share a review. I read all of them. They mean the world. Anytime you do leave a review, it really means the world, and it helps other people find a podcast that really is going to be supportive for them. So if you could take a moment to do that, that would be super appreciated. Thanks again for your time. Take care of you, won't you? And I'll see you next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr. Jodie Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.